Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Raptors here at the University of Minnesota Raptor Center. I am here today with a slightly off-screen great horned owl. I'm sure he'll be kind of wandering around. Sometimes this is Bubo, one of our resident great horned owls who'll be hanging out with us while we read. He's got a couple pieces of food kind of scattered around, and he might end up, a lot of times when he's been in here with us, he kind of ends up hanging out behind this perch behind me. So he might be kind of wandering around exploring over there a little bit as we read. So he might be in and out of frame a little bit as we go along, but we'll definitely get some time to look at all the great adaptations, all the feathering on this bird. I'll try not to move the camera around too much. Hopefully he'll kind of move a little bit more here. So great horned owls, of course, are a really exciting raptor that we have here in Minnesota and really all over North, Central, and South America. So they're one of my favorite birds to talk about just because there are so many of them, and you can find them in the countryside, you can find them in the woods, you can find them in the cities, you can find them in the desert. I mean, really everywhere. Like I said, most folks here in North, Central, or South America have great horned owls in their area, living close by where we live and go to parks and places like that. So great birds to be able to see up close. I have a book today that is a little bit unrelated. Maybe I will slightly adjust this so you can see him a little bit better. I have a book that is slightly unrelated. This is actually not about great horned owls or even about birds, but this is about a fellow top predator. We will scooch this over now that he's back here. But a fellow top predator, and one who actually shares a nickname with the great horned owl. The book today is called Lord of the Forest. There's a nice shiny gold lettering on it. This is by Carolyn Pitcher and Jackie Morris. And I wanted to read this book with a great horned owl because a nickname for the great horned owl is the tiger of the sky, or the tiger of the night, I have also heard. Mostly because of this great kind of stripy pattern camouflage that they have, but really kind of similar hunting styles. They're both ambush hunters, both tigers and great horned owls. They're both in kind of wooded areas, kind of open grassy spaces, ambushing their prey. So they're using their great camouflage to be able to kind of wait, look, listen for their prey, and then sneak up on them and pounce. So it's a great kind of nickname for great horned owl. So I thought that we had this beautiful book. A volunteer actually brought this in. It has amazing artwork. And even though it's not about birds, I thought it was great to read with a great horned owl. So like I said, he might be moving around a little bit behind us. I'll try not move the camera too much. I'll just kind of sit over here to the side. But I want to make sure you can see all of this. Really wonderful artwork. This is the front cover right away. You can see we're in for some really great kind of watercolor illustrations, which I'm really excited about. Right now he's looking around underneath the table behind us. So he might be doing a little bit of exploring as we look around. I just saw him looking into the this other perch over here on the side. So we'll see what this great horned owl guest gets up to while we are reading. But here is this first page. We have a couple of hornbills and a peacock. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit closer. Because again, I just think that this artwork style is absolutely gorgeous. That nice kind of almost like warm, humid, hazy kind of feeling that you get from this, that you think of in the kind of warm, potentially humid kind of habitat that you normally would find tigers living in, for at least for a large part of their range. So here's the first page called Lord of the Forest. This beautiful kind of a river landscape. In the very back, there's an elephant up here as well. Tiger was born fluffy and small with his eyes tight shut. You can see an adult tiger with 3 cubs, all kind of nestled together, keeping nice and warm and safe. The beautiful stripy pattern on all of them. He twitched his ears and said, "I can hear the forest, the sap rising in the trees and the grass growing long after spring rain. I hear the slither of zigzagged snakes and the crow of jungle fowl when he wakes. I hear a monkey whooping to his tribe and the shudder of the branch as he jumps. I can even hear the curling of chameleon's tongue and the gulp of a little gecko in the green." His mother said, "When you don't hear the forest, when silence simmers in the trees, then, my son, be ready. The Lord of the Forest is on his way." Here you can see, this is a troop of monkeys. I'm not particularly good at identifying monkeys, so I don't know exactly which kind these are. You can see there's a baby one clinging underneath here, and down at the very bottom, you can see our tiny young tiger looking around and exploring. Try to arrange so you can still see him. Tiger played and fought with his brothers. He swam in the cool water. What are you doing? He told his mother, "I can hear the creep of crabs from the pool, and the flip of fish as they leap in the cool, the croak and splash of jumping frogs, and the slither of water snake down from the logs." His mother said, "When you don't hear them, when silence burns and time stands still, then, my son, be ready. The Lord of the forest is here." Here you have these young, kind of looking teenager, juvenile-aged tigers kind of play fighting in the water. These beautiful lilies blooming, or maybe these are lotuses blooming. There in the very background you can see, looks like some sort of antelope, kind of deer-like creature over here in the back, maybe making way as these tigers are fighting. Tiger prowled in the mornings when sun streamed through mist. He stalked in the evenings on powerful paws with scimitar claws, and his eyes were worlds of wildness. You see that beautiful camouflage in action with these kind of tall, grassy areas. A couple of cranes in the background, taking advantage of that big, kind of open, grassy space. When Tiger was grown, he walked alone. His shoulder blades slid under his golden skin, rippling through the forest. His grass-shadowed and eye-dazzled bright, a stealthy cat alone in the night, solitary cat with mirrors in his eyes. Tiger lived his days by lakes and rocky ridges. He heard eagles soaring in the sky and ants scuttling down on the earth. He said, "I am still listening for that silence, still waiting for the Lord of the forest. Who is the Lord of the forest?" Here's this beautiful kind of, looks like maybe sunrise or sunset with the kind of light streaming through the trees, a beautiful kind of riverside, just looking for prey. "It's me," screeched Peacock, strutting with his hens. "I am lordly, Tiger, can't you see? My tail is magnificent. My feathers are holy. I kill snakes with my claws." Peacock rattled his quills. His tail with its 1,000 feather eyes spangled in the sun around his tiny head. Tiger said, "Your tail is beautiful, Peacock, but the Lord of the forest does not shriek and screech. Who is the Lord of the forest?" So you have this tiger and this peacock with that magnificent tail strutting around, showing off that amazing feathering. "It's me," roared Rhino, blundering through the trees. "Look at my suit of armor. Look at my deadly horn." Tiger said, "Short-sighted Rhino, the Lord of the forest does not bellow and snort and charge like a tank. Who is the Lord of the forest?" Here you can see that amazing kind of bony kind of armor plating over the top of that rhinoceros with that big horn for protection up here. In the background, you can also see some birds, some of those monkeys from before, kind of near the kind of open grassy areas with a little bit of forest nearby. "It's me, of course," trumpeted Elephant, swaying like a ship. His little mahout perched high on his back. "See my tusks gleam, hear my bells ring." Peacock dashed away, shrieking like a cat. Rhino bellowed and charged into a tree. Elephant stopped short and roared. "The Lord of the forest cannot be so noisy," said Tiger. "The Lord of the forest would never carry people on his back. Who is the Lord of the forest?" Here's this elephant. It's been dressed in this really beautiful robe. decorated. If not elephants, then who could it be? Proud Tiger saw a tigress slipping golden through the grass. He watched the white tips of her ears and her umbrella hook tail held high. Her sides were patterned black, ferns against the sun. Here's that kind of tail sticking up out of the grass. You can see the little white circles on the backs of their ears kind of showing up to each other. Our two tigers meeting. Tiger and tigress had cubs, fluffy and small, with their eyes tight shut. Tiger loved them so. He licked their faces with his great rough tongue, nuzzling and purring while he pinned them down. So here you have Tiger, maybe this is a sleepy tigress taking a break in the background. 4 of these cubs all climbing all over him, playing, learning how to play fight just like he did. In the midday heat, Tiger lounged under the fragrant moa tree, as comfortable as only a cat can be. He prowled up to his rocky ridge and stood between heaven and earth. He stretched his jaws wide and roared, "Tiger!" He stood there, still as a statue, and heard nothing. Silence simmered in the trees. Fear scorched the grass. "Where are you, Lord of the Forest?" he roared. "Show yourself!" And then the tigress called him from the pool. Here you have this big, beautiful open landscape, all the trees, all the mountains, these ridges, Tiger looking out over all of them. We have one of our peacocks down here flying away. "He's here," she purred. "Look in the water. The Lord of the Forest is you." There he is down by the water, down near these beautiful flowers. You can see him kind of leaning down to look at the reflection. Get a drink of water. This is that kind of same illustration from before at the end here with the hornbills and the peacocks. You didn't see the hornbills up close in the book at all, but I think they've got some beautiful colors too. So that is there one more? No. So that was Lord of the Forest. Sorry, the title is this kind of shimmery gold by Carolyn Pitcher and Jackie Morris. So like I was saying, I wanted to read this book with a great horned owl, since there are really a lot of similarities with tigers and kind of how they live in kind of a mix of kind of forested area and some kind of open grassland habitat. Great horned owls also live in that kind of mixed habitat. Some trees, some open grassy spaces, so they're able to perch up in trees and hide and use that excellent camouflage, and then look and listen, waiting for their prey to show up. Then they can swoop down and grab onto it. So they've got that great kind of camouflage, the stripes, that patterning that really helps them blend in, as well as that kind of stalking ambush style of hunting like tigers do. So again, they kind of get the nickname the tiger of the sky, kind of for those similarities. So I thought this would be a really fun one to read. And a nice adventure to somewhere maybe a little bit more kind of warmer than some of the places where some of us are right now, at least up here in the upper Midwest where it's been kind of cool and rainy lately. So they've been able to take a nice journey down to somewhere a little bit warmer. I did see a question in the chat here. I was going to scroll back. I think it was about how this owl came to have the name Bubo, which is a really good question. So all of the birds that are kind of our residents here at the Raptor Center who are not able to be released to the wild and have new jobs as education birds, teaching people about their species, we have names for them. They don't know their names, but we use them because we're people. We like names. It's a lot better for kind of keeping track of who's who. Great horned owl number 3 just doesn't really have a good ring to it. It's kind of tricky to remember. So we have names that we call all of the birds to help us keep track of who's who. And so this bird we call Bubo. It's actually after their scientific name. So for those of us not familiar, if we think about especially a bird like a great horned owl who has a huge range covering lots of different areas, different countries, lots of different cultures, lots of different languages. So in many other languages, people aren't going to call a great horned owl a great horned owl. That's our name for it in English. But people who speak other languages are going to call it something else. So if scientists are talking about one particular species, one kind of owl, we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So scientists have scientific names that are the same for everybody. They're usually based on kind of old languages that people don't really use as much anymore, like Latin or kind of older forms of Greek. So that way they're not really anyone's particular language, they're just kind of the language that we mostly use for scientific stuff. So with all of that, the scientific name for the great horned owl is Bubo virginianus, which is a fancy way of saying a big owl with kind of these feather tufts, or these plumicorns, these little tufts of feathers on their heads. That is the kind of genus, or kind of the closely related set of large feather tufted owls, like great horned owls or eagle owls, owls like that. They're in the genus Bubo. And then the virginianus part just means that these birds were first scientifically described in the area that came to be known as Virginia here in the United States. So people were kind of scientifically studying these birds and giving them names, and they first saw these birds in the area that would eventually become Virginia. So it's a very fancy way of saying that he's a big feather-tufted owl who was first described along the eastern part of North America. So that's where he gets his name, Bubo, which is pretty fun. The actual root, kind of Bubo, actually was kind of originally a way of kind of mimicking that call. It was an old term for a large hooting owl. And this kind of group of owls, the Bubo genus or Bubo group of owls, often makes that really classic hoot, hoot kind of noise. So that really classic hooting noise, you can see where they were able to kind of get that word for them that we then applied to big, large hooting owls. So that is the Bubo virginianus, or the great horned owl. That's where he gets his name. I know, maybe a more complicated answer to the question, but I personally am very interested in scientific names. I think the whole process is really fascinating. So I think it's really cool kind of looking at names and figuring out how different animals or different plants or fungi or insects, all sorts of things, how they're all related. And a lot of that information we can actually kind of store in how they're named, scientifically speaking, which I think is pretty cool. I'm gonna scroll through and see, oh, there's somebody in the chat is actually across the street at the vet clinic. So asking a very great question, are you open at all for people to see the birds? We still are not open to the public at all. Right now, most of our programs are online. We are doing some in-person, mainly outdoor programs that people are scheduling, but for the most part, our programming is online. If you do want to find out more about ways that you can kind of see these birds up close, you can definitely check out our website at theraptorcenter.org. We've also been posting some stuff here on our Facebook page. You can also, of course, always find us on Instagram as well at the Raptor Center. But definitely our website has some great information about other ways that you can see these birds up close. But as of right now, we are not open to the public at all here in person. Just our facility isn't quite set up for kind of making sure that everyone would be staying safe while that's happening. But hopefully we will be keeping everyone posted as that develops, as that changes. But for now, we are not open. But hopefully everyone's having good luck over at the vet clinic. For our friends who are over across the street right now. For those not familiar, we are part of the College of Veterinary Medicine. So here on the St. Paul campus of the U of M, we have a veterinary clinic across the street. We have our own veterinarians that specialize in raptors right downstairs. We also have lots of great kind of farming programs, and there's an equine center nearby for horse medicine. There are usually cows right behind the building. Really cool stuff going on the St. Paul campus, which is always really exciting. I'm gonna make sure that we didn't see, that we didn't have any other questions in the chat here. Otherwise, a few more things, I guess, about Bubo here, since somebody had asked about the name for this bird. This particular great horned owl, he is 21 years old this year, I believe, right around there. And he's actually what we call a human imprint. So we've been posting a lot, and we are still seeing a lot of young raptors being brought into the Raptor Center. It's baby raptor season. So some really important things to remember is if you are out and about and you see any baby raptors, including baby owls, or any other young wildlife, a couple of things that you can do to help them out if you think that they might need some assistance. If it's a raptor, like a baby owl or hawk, falcon, vulture, eagle, even osprey, If you see any of those youngsters that you think might need some help, if you're here in the Minnesota area, you can give us a call at the Raptor Center. Otherwise, you can look up your own local raptor or wildlife rehab center. But for here in Minnesota, you can call the Raptor Center, and we can usually help figure out if that bird even needs help. Sometimes these birds are totally able to take care of themselves, or their parents are taking care of them on the ground or wherever they're at, but sometimes they do need a little bit of help from people. If it is another kind of type of wildlife, a young deer, some young rabbits, something like that, you can call the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Minnesota. They're really close by as well, over just in Roseville, for those of you local to the Minnesota area. And so you can give them a call too, and we can help figure out if those animals even need help. A lot of these animals, for over many years, have adapted to, sometimes things happen with youngsters. Sometimes mom or dad leaves them in a spot and kind of goes about their business for the day. So sometimes that's just part of how they survive out in the wild, is leaving those youngsters alone for a little bit. So definitely give either us or the Wildlife Center a call to make sure that those animals even need help. If they do, though, definitely make sure that they are brought to a licensed rehabilitator, so that way we can make sure that those animals are raised the way that they need to be with members of their species, so that way that we can make sure that they can return out to the wild where they belong and where they can do their jobs successfully. This great horned owl here, we call him a human imprint, because when he was a youngster, he was found out of his nest and was actually raised by people for a period of time. And so instead of imprinting or kind of hardwiring into his brain what a great horned owl is, he was being raised by people and seeing people and getting food from people. So instead of hardwiring into his brain what an owl is, he got a little bit confused, and what is hardwired into his brain isn't quite right. It's not what he needs to do to be a successful great horned owl out in the wild. So that is why he lives with us here at the Raptor Center, is he's not able to go out into the wild. If we do get young owls in who we are not able to return to their nests, we can usually find some other owls who are able to raise them. For example, we keep track of the kind of great horned owl nests in an area. So if we get a young great horned owl in, and we're not able to return it to its parents, we can often find a nest that we're able to add it into. If those youngsters are really healthy and doing great, a third great horned owl youngster isn't usually too big of a deal for those parents to take care of. Great horned owls don't really seem to be able to count, so if they leave and come back and now they have 3 youngsters instead of 2, they don't seem to know the difference, and they just raise them all anyway. So that way that young owl still gets a really great shot at going out into the wild and being able to survive successfully. So yes, we are, so of course we are very happy to have Bubo, the great horned owl, who's been teaching people for such a long time, but we want to make sure the rest of those youngsters are able to get back out into the wild. So we have one more question in the chat. Do we have any snowy owls at the Raptor Center? I would actually have to double check to see if any are in the clinic. We don't have any that live with us permanently as education birds. Even here in Minnesota, it gets pretty warm during the summer. So normally that can be pretty tricky for snowy owls. They really need those really low temperatures for the whole year. So generally you don't see too many of them here. But maybe down in the clinic, I think at this point, any snowy owls that we still had recuperating from the winter have now been released back to the wild, but I can maybe double check. Or we also post, we'll update our website with the kind of current clinic census, so you can check it out on there as well. But I think at this point, any ones that we had still from the winter have been successfully released, but I'd have to double check to see. All right, folks, I think that was all the questions that we had in the chat, but thank you all so much for your great questions and coming and watching Reading with Raptors with us this week. As always, again, you can check us out. We're at theraptorcenter.org. You can keep an eye on us here on Facebook or on our Instagram at the Raptor Center for all the updates about kind of what we're all up to, our online programs, some of our in-person program offerings as those keep on developing. And you can also find other ways to kind of stay involved with the work that we're doing here. Otherwise, everyone, have a great, we're getting into the springtime now, so hopefully some folks are getting out doing some great safe outdoor birding as we get more migrants coming through. I know I saw some yellow-rumped warblers yesterday, so I'm pretty excited. It's great birding weather out right now. So hopefully you're all getting out and enjoying some of this kind of great springtime weather that we're having. Otherwise, everyone, we'll see you all next week for more Reading with Raptors. Have a good week.